Hello, everybody, and welcome in to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It is Thursday, January 2nd, 2024. We hope you had a great new year. George Kurth here with the one and only Cody Roadcap. How was your new year, Cody?
It was great. Looking forward to 2025, leaving second place finishes in 2024.
You had plenty of those, like you have in the last how many years in our
I don't
league
want
of
to talk
record?
about it. New year,
You're
new
really
me.
getting me off this subject quickly.
New year,
You want a
new me.
picture of the trophy I bought for the winner?
No, why would I want that?
Because I'm teasing you, Cody. I would not start the year off any other way.
I thought this was supposed to be something different. New year, new us. New year, new show. No, it's New Year, same George. What's up with that?
Changed my life in other ways, but making fun of you will always be one of my pastimes.
Okay, I can respect that, I guess.
Always be genuinely me. At least that's what I was told by my mom at one point.
You're getting deep. I think you need to get a little bit more lighthearted as we talk about this joke of a Week 18 slate.
We have a couple things to talk about, I guess. Week 18 coming up. We have some Couch GMs World Cup updates. And we're going to talk a little bit of DFS this week since Fantasy Football League should be over. If yours is not and you have questions, drop them in the comments. But you should not be playing in a week like this. Make sure you follow us at the Couch GMs, Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok. You can send us a message if we are not live to answer any of those questions you have. Ask us for analysis, whatever it might be. And make sure you're watching us live Mondays and Thursdays at 6:30 East. That will continue through the playoffs. So looking forward to hearing more content on the NFL. But Cody, why don't we start off updating the Couch GMs World Cup? Now, you see, I said this and then I wasn't actually ready for it. So this is a great time. We did kind of mention a little bit about what was going on. I had to pull up the spreadsheet, man. Spreadsheets.
Unprepared, unprofessional. Come on, George.
Seriously. We did mention some of their finals matchups that were pretty much decided. Nothing crazy happened after last show on Monday. So our winners in year 2, Reed, who beat Cody, Sean beat Bree, and Anthony won in my group to move into the final. Interesting thing, Anthony is now qualified for the final at a solid record of 11-17 through the 2 years. But the championship win moves him through. So I can give a little recap here. The 6 winners that are moving on to the year 4 final so far. We got friend of the show, who we mentioned all the time here, Kempy, Reed, Shelby, Sean, Jason, and Anthony. I mean, it's interesting seeing 2 teams actually below 500 that are ready to go into the final. Cody.
Yeah, I mean, I will say both of them obviously had good years this year, just rough year ones. And you just need to win one of the 3 years to qualify. So they are locked in, but there is still
Jason had a good year 1, bad year 2. But yeah.
Correct.
He's the other team that is below 500 and set to be in the final.
For sure. And then as it stands right now, if we ended it today, the 4 wild card teams would be Bree, Andrew, Colin, and myself. And all that can change because with one more year, there's 3 more opportunities for automatic qualifiers for anyone below that line. So it could come down to just only 1 wild card getting in. It could come down to 2 if we have a repeat winner, and so on and so on. And we'll keep you all up to date with how that is going all next season.
Biggest thing to note, 3 of the teams that are currently in, Andrew S., I'd say Andrew S., Colin, and Cody, are all at 18-10 with the record. Bree, who is currently leading the wild card, is at 22-6. That is a 4-game lead on the wild card. So if there's 3 new winners next year and one of them is not Bree, she's got a really big jump on the pack, which is why everyone was rooting for her instead of Sean last week.
Yeah, but fantasy is wild, so she has to feel pretty good if she gets to 7 wins. You would have to think, but that's no easy feat in fantasy. Not everyone can make their championship final drafting Christian McCaffrey 101. Some people end up at the very bottom of their leagues doing that, and that might happen again next year.
Fan question, I say jokingly. Tyler said, will a Couch GM make it? Well, Cody's at least currently in. I stink, and I don't know where Marcus is. I think he's down right there with me. I don't know if any of the three of us are going to make it.
I was going to say, is there only? I just said I'm in the wild card spot. And George sucks.
Yeah, and
Where
like
are
I said,
you
I
at,
don't know.
George?
Marcus is at 500, so I don't know if
You're
any of the three
22.
of them are going to make it. Yeah, I don't know.
Does it make you feel any worse that you're sitting at 13-5, the same record as Jason? You're 22nd, and he's locked in.
It hurts a little bit. I mean, this year was just unacceptably bad. I really liked my year one. I just sputtered out in the playoffs. It's just the weird nature of how this goes. That like, I don't think I deserve to be in with how I played through 2 years. I could say the same about Jason, except for the fact that he had a playoff run.
George is just jealous, but I think that's
A
enough
little bit.
World Cup talk. We got a lot to get through for this episode, and
Do we?
World Cup really gets interesting as we head into year 3. So why don't we sit back, relax, and
Cody just taking my transition and everything here. We're gonna go through the entire slate of games quickly. Not a whole lot for us to talk about in some of these games, but there's some playoff scenarios we'll go over, some interesting facts about whether it's players sitting, players going for incentives, etc. So we'll kind of go through as we go here, starting with 2 games on Saturday. The entire AFC North is playing on Saturday. Browns at Ravens is the first game at 4:30. Ravens obviously clinched the division with a win. And my Tyler's fun fact of the day, Cleveland is an 18-point underdog, according to Vegas in this game. During their entire 0-16 season, they were never worse than a 13.5-point underdog. 18 is aggressive.
yeah, take the points.
Yeah.
Like
I would take the Ravens to win the game, but 18 points, it's almost 3 touchdowns.
yeah, that's wild. I mean, I know the Browns are bad. I know they're starting Bailey Zappi this week. So
why are we going to him? Is Jameis hurt?
He's banged up, but he's been the emergency third quarterback. So it's a very interesting situation. I guess the only thing is, like, Bailey Zappi's still young. Like, is that a guy you want to bring back next year as a potential development prospect? Jameis, you know what you're going to get. Like, that's the only question mark. Do you re-sign Jameis to start behind Deshaun Watson because they reworked his deal? He's going to be back next year for Cleveland. So there's nothing to fight for, I guess. So it's interesting. And yeah, the whole 18-point underdogs is a lot. And I think this also plays big into the next game, which is the Bengals at the Steelers. Because if the Ravens win, how hard do the Steelers play, knowing there's not much that can change because they already clinched a playoff spot. They can't get the division. I think they potentially could move from 5 to 6. Like, they're in that range, but like, what's really the difference there?
The difference is the Ravens or the Texans. And I think we're going to have a similar discussion to this when we're looking in the NFC between 6 and 7. Like, I personally feel like that's a big deal.
I mean, I guess 6 and 7 in the NFC is a big deal. And I guess Ravens versus the Texans would be worth noting. Do you want to play, especially like if the Steelers case, do you want to play your division rival for a third time?
Yeah, that exactly. I mean, traditionally, the Steelers have actually had the Ravens number with Lamar, but the last game they played was not pretty. And then having to go back to Baltimore, where you just got beat down a couple of weeks ago, is going to be a tough sell. And the Steelers themselves are just on a skid, 3-game losing streak. Bengals have a lot to play for because they're playing before the Broncos and Dolphins. They still have a shot at a playoff spot. They're keeping their playoff hopes alive with this game. So they're not going to have an easy task in this one. The only thing that makes it easier is that Chase Brown is listed as questionable for this game.
Yeah, and then just not really game related, but this whole schedule is quirky and not much to talk about. Just a random, like, this would be like a Super Bowl prop bet. Bengals are not Bengals. Steelers or Ravens. Which team plays on Sunday first? It'd be a month since one of them have played on a Sunday, with them having the Saturday Christmas now Saturday. Do they get both Saturday? Does one get Saturday and Monday night? Like, are they done playing on Sundays? Just a weird scheduling quirk. That's all that is.
I mean, unless they get to the championship game.
I guess that would be they could hold out until the championship game when both games are on Sunday.
Yeah, but that's a crazy run when you consider how the NFL owns Sundays, and then it's been like Thursday, Saturday, Wednesday. Like,
yeah, unfortunately, I don't think the Steelers are going to make it to the championship round. I think their run of being competitive is kind of up. That you starting to see the cracks in their defense, with TJ Watt not being quite 100%, still very good, but not quite 100%. Russell Wilson being Russell Wilson. I actually like the Bengals in this one, and I think that makes the game more interesting on Sunday as well. Although when we get to Sunday, we're going to talk about how the Broncos, the team that the Bengals need to lose, should win their game.
yeah, we'll get to that one. But looking at it, yeah, Bengals trying to keep their hopes alive. Steelers, this feels a lot like a 2020 Steelers record, like Steelers season, where they were the most fraudulent 11-0 team in NFL history, and then it showed with a first round exit. We'll obviously see if that happens here again. We can move on to the early window on Sunday. First game, the one I don't have any notes for, Jaguars at Colts. Colts ended their season basically last week with a loss to the Giants. Jags obviously are playing for a better draft pick at this point. Not a whole lot to talk about here.
Is Shane Steichen still the head coach on Monday after that performance last week? That is, I think, the most captivate. Like, do either of these head coaches get another year? Are they both gone? I think that's the highlight of this matchup, unfortunately.
It is. I mean, honestly, I think I'm kind of leaning towards both are going to be gone. I didn't think Steichen was going to leave after going into last week, but it was a collapse of all collapses against what was the worst team in the NFL. Now, obviously, the Giants not in that number one draft pick spot anymore, but with how they've been mediocre over the last few years and then having that horrible collapse with still a shot at the playoffs, it's not good.
Yeah, I actually think there's a better chance that Doug Peterson stays than Shane Steichen.
Because Doug Peterson at least has the pedigree of he's won a Super Bowl. Shane Steichen, I mean, he's one of those hot young coaches when he was hired, but he doesn't have that pedigree.
Yeah, and I think that collapse is worth. I mean, everybody was beating up on the New York Giants, and it wasn't like you lost on a last second field goal. Although the score was close, they dominated you for over 40 points. Like, that was embarrassing. I mean, if the Colts come out and respond and play hard for their coach, maybe it gets salvaged. But you're also playing the Jaguars, so it's going to be hard to glean. That's going to be an interesting 48 hours after that game in Indianapolis for sure.
Interesting 48 hours in Indy and in Jacksonville. Going on to a playoff-bound Buffalo Bills traveling to the New England Patriots. Bills have nothing to play for. They're locked into the 2 seed, and Sean McDermott says that they're going to play a mix of starters and backups. So not a complete bench, but I would see this probably playing like a preseason game. You might see a quarter out of Josh Allen and company.
Yeah, and I think some of that's too is coach speak. Like, even when we say bench the starters, some starters are still going to have to play just because there's not enough people on the roster to fill every position, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, your team's not carrying 10 offensive linemen, so you can run a full subset.
Yeah.
So Josh Allen's going to start to keep the record. He might play a drive. They score a touchdown. He's coming out. James Cook isn't going to be in there much longer. Amari Cooper isn't going to be in there because he's already been banged up. But guys like Matt Collins, he's a veteran, but he might be out there running a couple routes. Same with Kincaid. He's young. They'll probably run him for a couple extra routes. Like Von Miller, he's probably playing 2 snaps. They have enough with him. So I think that's be an interesting game. And the Patriots, as they currently sit as the number 1 seed or the number 1 pick, they don't have much to play for other than trying to maintain that top spot. And I believe, aren't they also sitting Drake May in this one? Did I not hear that?
He is injured still, so I would not be shocked if that was the case, but I missed that one.
Yeah, I don't think he's planning on playing in. Oh, this does say now an hour ago he is expected to start. So
Okay, well there we go. Injury status update there from Cody. Anything else to talk Bills Patriots?
nope,
Didn't think so. I'm
that would be my
sorry.
answer for a lot of these games.
Exactly. Moving on to Texans at Titans. So if the Patriots do pull off a victory, the Titans have a shot at the number 1 pick. They're currently number 2. Texans locked into the 4 seed in the playoffs, but they're going to be playing their starters for at least part of the game to, quote, play better, is how their coach said it.
I mean, Green Bay's in a very similar situation. They have
Yeah.
not, they have clinched spots. They've played good in spurts, but they haven't played good enough to earn the right to sit their starters. So I think there is some benefits to, starting to build momentum as you go into the playoffs when you most likely are going to be an underdog. Uh, Maybe the Texans would still be favored at home against like the Pittsburgh Steelers, but you'd have to think they're going to be an underdog in that situation, or at least a push, or -1, +1, something similar like that. So I think that's just smart for the Texans. They need to keep trying to get better and improving. I think it's 100% the right play to play their guys to quote unquote play better. And the Titans, they're playing both quarterbacks, which I think is funny.
Yes, the Titans are playing both quarterbacks to try and just trying to like see the future, who is going to be there in long
Cam Ward,
term, but
and there's your
probably.
10 seconds of college football talk.
I mean, we had a slam dunk 10 seconds of college football talk because there's literally a bowl game going on, a college football semifinal going on, or quarterfinal, my
First of
bad,
all,
going on right now.
first of all, thoughts and prayers out to all the victims of the New Orleans incident that caused this game to be pushed back from traditional New Year's Day to today.
Good
But
call,
why was
Cody.
it
Yes.
postponed? Why was it postponed to so early?
Yeah, that I don't quite understand. A lot of people went back to work on the second. It's not like this is like a wash of a week. So it was really interesting to see that now people on the West Coast especially had this game
Are
come on
the
at 1.
are the Saints at home? Like, do they need to turn? No, they're not even at home.
No.
Like, unless there's another bowl game playing in that stadium this weekend. Like, why wasn't this like a 7 o'clock game? I just don't understand that.
Yeah, I don't quite understand that either, but don't know. I actually missed a couple of incentives that we were going to throw up there from Saturday. The biggest thing I missed on here, Mike Gesicki needs 3 receiving yards for $125,000. That's the biggest. But in this game, if you want something to root for, the Texans playing their starters for part of the game. Joe Mixon needs 107 yards for $250,000, and Nico Collins needs 32 yards to reach 1,000 on the season, despite missing all that time with injury.
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, the Vegas books have these incentives too. So like when you're playing DFS, you'll see the adjusted cost for players that are chasing, money incentives, and that's become more of a thing. Like see what players are going to play for. I mean, we're even talking, Texans Titans. The Titans head coach even admitted he was like, well, Tony Pollard's banged up, but he has financial, incentives to try to play. So if he can go, we're going to get him out there and try to get him that. Like, which I mean, that's a great message for a coach to say, to be like, hey, we understand that this is a business and you want to make your money, and if you're close, we're going to try to help you out.
Tony Pollard, 83 rushing yards for 250K, and 2 rushing touchdowns for 200K. So, yeah, definitely some financial incentives for Tony Pollard as well.
Yeah, and, as we were thinking about this game, and the Titans, they're currently sitting as the number 2 pick, and this is going to be like only like maybe 6 people in the whole world might understand this reference. But when we were in college, we went to a Division II school, and we played in the PSAC, if anyone cares. And when I say we shot the games, we did not play football, but we were involved in some little capacity. They run their championship how the last week the game is scheduled, and then if you make the championship, you play that team, and that team that was supposed to play it plays your previous opponent. With how crazy these week 18s are getting, and maybe it's just this year, sometimes there's a lot of drama, but there's not. What if the NFL did that for like the first overall pick?
I think that'd be a fantastic idea. The only thing is, what happens then if you end up with a playoff team that's like fight with a team that's fighting for a playoff spot, and it ends up either being an easier game because somebody's like, benching starters, and it gives someone a cakewalk win to get in, or like
Was that
there's
any difference than what we're seeing right now with the Chiefs and the Broncos?
it's fair. That's a good point. It would give fans something to look forward to in week 18. Because it doesn't make sense to like put top of the conference versus top of the conference, because like that's no one's gonna play anybody for the most part, or it just makes it harder for somebody to get a bye. It almost makes it better for you to play from behind. Like playing for the first overall pick is also tough because you're almost like, how many like teams will never play to lose, but like it'd be the ultimate situation of rooting for your team to lose.
No, you'd want to win to get the number one
You're
pick.
saying win, even if it gives you a better record, you would still get
Yeah,
the first overall pick.
that would determine who gets the number one pick. Win gets you the number one pick.
Oh, that would be an interesting wrinkle.
Yeah, like these two are locked into the top two. Winner gets the number one pick. Instead of doing a coin flip, if they have the same exact record at the end, they get through all the tiebreakers. It's literally a coin flip. That's the tiebreaker. Let them play a game. I think it'd be a fun wrinkle scenario, whatnot, that we'll never see.
That we will never see, but I would root for it. We can move on to some NFC playoff teams here. This talk of the week seems to be Giants at Eagles, where the Eagles are resting their starters, and we will not see Saquon Barkley go for the rushing record. What are your thoughts before I talk about it on the Eagles deciding to not go for it?
I think it is the right move from a logistics, probability, analytics to, because if he got hurt chasing a record and missed out on the playoffs, Nick Sirianni would be crucified for having him in that game.
Yes.
However, this is Philadelphia we're talking about. That's a passionate fan base. It seems like some of the players might have wanted it. Now it sounds like they did talk to the players, and they were like, we're going to make a decision as a team, which I guess is a good way to go about it. But yeah, I think it's the right move, but I understand why people are upset.
It sounded like Saquon didn't care like too much coming out of the week. He's like, I got 2,000, that's great. And then as he sat on, he's like, it'd be really cool to be able to go for it, but like I'm gonna go with what we think is the smart move. A couple of the offensive linemen said, definitely, we got to go for this. And then a couple of the veteran guys were like, this isn't the smart move. We got to take the rest, especially because they haven't had a bye since week 5. Like that's crazy. So I think it was the smart move as well. It's amazing how many people I've heard coming out criticizing not going for it. And then at the same time, how many people just came out and were like, well, it doesn't matter if he would have broke the record anyway, because Dickerson did it in 16 games and this would be 17. My argument to them is OJ Simpson broke 2014. So he's the rushing champ then.
Well, let's not get crazy. I understand what you're saying. That is a valid argument. Like it is one more game that he would have the opportunity, but that's just the way we live in the NFL. We've seen records get broken because of having the extra game already. I do think the only criticism I have is if, like, the offensive line has talked about how like they want this just as much as Saquon because there's only 8 players that have ran for 2,000 yards, which coincidentally also means there's only 8 offensive linemen. Obviously, that's 40 total, or a couple extra for injuries. They'd be like, I blocked for a 2,000-yard rusher. So it means something to them. So as long as this move was made collectively as a team, and the players will never say, like, they're going to put on a front no matter what. Yeah, we decided as a team. But if that's actually what happened, great. If it's not, and this starts to cause friction, like this is not the time to have friction right now. And honestly, like I do think there is something to say, like, what if you would have played him for a quarter, a half, to see what it was like?
Yeah.
I think the other thing that also is such an interesting factor into this conversation, and I don't know if it helps it or hurts it, but it's because it's against the Giants.
Exactly. Former team, revenge game. The last time he played the Giants, he had a chance to break his individual rushing, like single game rushing record, and decided not to. He ended up breaking that again later in the season against the Rams. But like, because it's former team and because it's for a record that stood for how long, that's why we're talking about this. The other way I look at it is, if there was no rushing record involved, this is a no-brainer. Sit your players, get a rest first time with a chance to do that since week 5. Like, I feel like as much as this is a milestone thing, you're doing the smart thing. You're playing it how you would always play it, by sitting them.
Yes, but the record, and like I just gave props, right, to Callahan, the Titans coach, being like, yeah, we know that Pollard has incentives in his contract.
Yeah.
Right. They understand what that to be in the history books as the all-time of anything in this league. Like, Saquon Barkley breaks the record, instant lock for Hall of Fame.
It's true.
Instant lock. The way he's played. Like, there's no doubt about that. So there's a lot more on the line because of the record. And what is the number? You're an Eagles fan. You probably have this memorized on the back of your hand.
He needs 101 yards. He's exactly 100 behind Eric Dickerson right now. So I think it's 2105, and Saquon's at 2005.
So literally, that's what I'm saying. They could play a quarter and he could potentially break it because Hurts ain't playing. He's still in concussion protocol.
Yep.
Pickett has broken ribs.
They're starting Tanner McKee probably this week.
Right. So you know what that playbook's going to look like?
Inside handoffs, outside handoffs.
And Saquon Barkley's good enough to take 10 carries on the first drive for 80 yards or less. And then he's only 30 yards away.
Yeah.
I think if they're not going to switch at this point.
No.
Unless the players like rally together before Friday. But I'm interested to see how that all plays out.
Me too. Very interested to see. But I'm assuming from everything I've heard, they talked to the players. This is a consensus decision at this point. Even if some people made the argument for, some people made the argument against, this is what they decided on. So I'm not too worried about it being an actual like issue in the locker room.
Wait till they come out rusty in the first round of the playoffs and get bounced. Then you didn't get the record and a one and done.
You're just saying that because they're most likely playing the Packers in round 1.
I didn't say that.
I'm adding context to your thoughts.
No, I don't care who they're playing. Like, they could play, if they play the Packers, I mean, that'd be great for me. But I'm just saying, like, that whole
it's a true issue that could happen.
Like, if Philly, we saw what happened when Philly won the Super Bowl. If you don't let Philly get this record and then get bounced in round 1,
yeah,
like, heck, Sirianni could be hanging out with Shane Steichen at that point.
Sirianni, Shane Steichen, and Doug Peterson gonna have a powwow next week, or in 2 weeks, I guess.
In front of
if it goes that bad.
Statue.
I love how my phone keeps bringing up Siri when I say Sirianni. It's a great time.
But we talked enough about your Eagles in a game that really doesn't matter. And
quick notes on the Giants. Malik Neighbors needs 2 receptions to break the rookie wide receiver receptions record, 4 to break the rookie reception record overall, pending what Brock Bowers does this week.
That'd be cool if they're playing each other.
Yeah, right. There we go. Make that a game against each other.
And they're not even playing at the same time. The Raiders
play
not. Later.
And now there's 2 games that can affect the team that will be playing against the Eagles in the wild card weekend. First off, Commanders at Cowboys. Commanders will get the 6th seed with a win or a Packers loss. That means that they would go to the Rams. Commanders are likely to play their starters throughout because Dan Quinn said, quote, "We are going to fight like hell to keep the 6th seed." I said, quote, because he's scared of Philly because of all the crap they talked.
Philly's
after
scared
the
of
Week
them.
16 game.
Philly's scared of Washington on a bad year.
Washington on a bad year even is worse, but I'm not personally worried about it because they beat the Eagles without Jalen Hurts most of the game. And then the other game, it looked close because they almost knocked Jalen Hurts out with a concussion. My biggest issue is them knocking Jalen Hurts out with a concussion. They almost did it twice. They did it once.
Yeah, I mean, divisional is always crazy in the wild card weekend, so I don't blame them for wanting to hold on to that 6 seed. You mentioned it. The 6 seed is gonna get to face uh,
The Rams.
well, is the Rams lose and the Buccaneers win, can't
That'd
they
be the
flip?
only scenario that would flip. But either way, Rams or Bucks, you have to think is a step down from playing going to Philly.
Oh, it's definitely a step down. Which one would you rather play between those two? Because I think that's a super fascinating question.
They're both on similar runs. I think I would go Tampa Bay because they seem to be more banged up.
Yeah, I keep going back and forth. Like Tempe is definitely more banged up. I mean, the Rams haven't scored 20 points in a month. So like there's also that aspect of it. But they have Stafford, Cup, Nakua, like
Kyron.
McVay, guys that have but also guys that have done it. Like
Yeah.
playoff experience.
Yeah.
The Buccaneers, there's not too many left holdovers from the Brady era on that team still outside of like Mike Evans. So I guess there is a couple, but like
But it's literally just Mike Evans and was Kate Otten on one of those teams? I don't even think so. It was still
yeah,
Gronk.
K Dot was tight end too. Like
Yeah.
there's a couple players, but it's not a lot. I mean, it was Todd Bowles, I think, or did he take over the year after? And Arians was the head coach
Arians
when
was
they
the head
won
coach and Bowles was the
the DC.
DC, my bad.
Yeah. So, but I think there's also like I don't know the way Baker's playing right now, like just being that like gunslinger, like he's also like a guy you don't want to play because if
He's
he gets
also
on a
hurt.
yeah, but I Baker being hurt is like saying uh Tom Brady's hurt. The dude's gonna play. Aaron Rodgers hurt. The dude's gonna play.
Patrick Mahomes
Josh,
hurt his ankle.
right? Like I don't. Sure, he's hurt. Everyone's hurt. He's not injured.
Fair. I get it. So tough argument between the two, being honest. It's experience and been there before versus the hot team that's more banged up.
Like honestly, you want the Buccaneers to lose. You want the Falcons.
That's true. Falcons playing with house money with Penix, but like they're not as complete of a team as Tampa Bay is.
Like I don't want to get too far ahead, but it's our show. We can talk about whatever we want. If I'm Detroit and I lose and then have to go to Tampa, playing a team that already beat me after being the high, we're the best team in the league. All of a sudden, we're not in the wild card. We're on the road the next week, not sitting at home watching these games. I'm going to Tampa. Like,
Yeah. That's
so
a tough sell. It's a tough sell regardless, but if you're telling me they're going to Atlanta, I feel a lot more confident.
Or Jared Goff is going home to LA. Like, give me that. You know, we heard all
That was a
last year
close
about
game last year. That was a close
Stafford
game
coming to
earlier
Detroit.
this year.
Oh, but now he has to go to LA and doesn't get the Jared Goff. Well, he probably will because no one's a Rams fan to buy enough tickets to that game. But like,
Yeah.
I think the Lions' potential wild card matchups, if they lose, I still think they have a chance to beat the Vikings. But if they lose, I think is some of the most fascinating stuff. Oh, in the
I
week.
think that's a game we're gonna want to spend a lot more time on, so we have to keep moving. But I'm talking about 6 seed Commanders lock it with a win or a Packers loss. Packers play the Bears. They need a win and a Commanders loss to move up to the 6 seed to deal with that Buccaneers/Rams matchup. Packers are going to play their starters and hope to move to the 6 seed and quote clean up a lot of things. They might not play the full game depending on how things are going and the result of that game and the results of the Washington game and how they like how things are looking. But Packers, like you said earlier, they need reps.
Yeah, I promise you, them pulling their starters will have nothing to do with the Commanders game. The Commanders
They're not
could
going to
be
be
up.
watching it. They're just going to be
They're
watching themselves.
It is 100. If they would have lost that game, and this is what's crazy, that game came down to we need a fourth quarter stop or a fourth down or a third down stop to make them punt to get the ball back for a chance to go down and win the game. Like, so they were in it at the end, but they played so poorly for 3/4 of that game that they did not earn the right to bench their starters. If that was a close, hard-fought game and they lost on a last-second field goal, but they felt good about where they were at, I don't think they would play even if it meant dropping to the 7th seed. But because of how poorly they played and how they've had slow starts, think about like the Packers are most likely going to be a 12-win team, but they blocked a field goal against Chicago. They had a win on. They had two. I mean, every team has won close games. Like I could say the same thing about the Kansas City Chiefs, but this team isn't happy about the way they're playing. And what better way than to go spank the Bears for a 12th straight time?
I see exactly how you're feeling, Cody, but I've seen the Packers go on some runs just from getting that one thing to jumpstart. If they look at that fourth quarter from last week against the Vikings as a good, like a positive step, and they can build momentum off of that despite losing that game, they could be one of the scariest teams in the playoffs. I still don't want the Eagles to play them in round one. I'd rather play the Commanders. I know that might be a hot take considering you're playing a team for the third time, but I see the potential in the Packers. They're just streaky.
They're streaky. And I think it'd be really interesting too for the Packers coming into the playoffs as the 7 seed. Obviously, if you can get the 6 seed, great. But if you're in the 7 seed, in all likelihood, that would require you to beat the or to make the Super Bowl. You would have to beat the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
Then you would have to go on the road to whichever team is the 1 seed. And then you would feel pretty good if the Eagles and the 1 seed are gone, that the 5 seed, which is the remaining NFC North team, is going to make it to the finals at that point.
Yep. So you're going to have to play 2 division rivals and the Eagles.
All 3 teams are their only 5 losses.
And all the way.
Like, I think that is such an interesting, can they get revenge for every team they lost to on one magnificent road run to the Super Bowl? Highly
unlikely. Asking for 1 is okay. Asking for 2 is a tough sell. Asking for 3, that would probably be one of the most ridiculous playoff runs I can remember.
It would be just about as ridiculous as the 2010 run when Aaron Rodgers did it. Can Jordan Love repeat it? And where did that game start? Where did that playoff run start, George?
In Philly against Michael Vick.
Yep. So
Saints at Buccaneers. We're talking
George,
NFC South.
I don't want to relive that.
Yeah, man. Get out of here.
You don't want to relive fantasy championship weekend? I'm not reliving the 2010 playoffs.
Saints at Buccaneers. We mentioned it. Bucs clinched the NFC South with a win. I'll pair this game with Panthers at Falcons, where the Falcons would need a win and a Bucs loss to get in. Saints don't have anybody left. Panthers obviously have been playing spoiler and embracing it for the last month and a half. So Falcons have the tougher matchup, and the Bucs, even though they're banged up, like you said, everyone's banged up.
Yeah, I have no words for either of these. I don't know how the Buccaneers lose unless New Orleans rallies.
We've seen them do it, but I don't think they're going to have Carr still. So they've been a mess without him, and with him, they've been a decent team at best.
Yeah. And Carolina's not going to go away easily on the Falcons. So
no, like I said, Carolina has literally been embracing the spoiler role, almost beating Kansas City, almost beating Philly, getting a couple wins in there.
I mean, they were in a shootout until that blocked punt or field goal, whichever one it was, and then it went sideways for them last week against the Bucs. But yeah, the Falcons, they missed out there on some poor clock management against the Commanders to potentially keep their self in the driver's seat.
Exactly. That wraps up the 1 o'clock window. Sunday late window, 4:30. Starting off with the West, 49ers at Cardinals. Not much to play for here. Purdy, dealing with his elbow injury that benched him at the end of the Monday night game, is going to be out, and Josh Dobbs is getting the start this week.
Yeah, I know, just long-term, Purdy's arm concerns me about, especially with this contract he's about to get. Because it wasn't a violent hit. It didn't look super awkward. It was just oh, my arm's burning and I can't really do anything. And don't get me wrong, nerve sensitivities is incredibly painful. But definitely concerning about what happened to Purdy. But hey, Dobbs walked him right down and scored a touchdown. I feel like I should have got Josh Dobbs points for playing Brock Purdy, but that's a debate for a different day.
That's you vote for the rule change of you pick team quarterback instead of individual quarterback.
Add it to the list.
Got it. Never going to pass, but I kind of like the idea.
Add it to Kempy's list.
The Kemper Bowl, which we talked about in the last show. Kempy, if you're there, add it to your list. See if he comments here again. But no, you're right. The Purdy elbow does kind of concern me, especially because he had to get the Tommy John surgery because he tore the tendon in a playoff game, and then now this, which seemed harmless, but we also had quarterbacks who have rebounded from nerve issues in their elbow before. I mean, we had the Marcus Mariota played an entire year with an elbow issue similar to that, and so it's concerning, but at the same time, it could be completely fine.
And I don't think Tom or Purdy ever got officially Tommy John. I think
he just had a different repair.
Yeah, it wasn't officially Tommy John, but it's just something to keep an eye on because when we're in the offseason, we're going to get that breaking news. Brock Purdy signs 4-year, $310 million contract.
I also want you to know there were some 49ers fans I heard out there being like, that might have been Brock Purdy's last snap as a 49er. I don't see that happening.
Well, he's under contract next year too. So
okay. So he's just up for contract extension. It's not like he's actually going to be a pending free agent.
No, he's just now eligible for a contract. He has 1 more year left.
So the worst you would see is them playing him 1 more year on his rookie contract and doing one of those signs in the middle of the year, or seeing what happens when he hits the market the previous offseason.
Yeah, or they trade for J.J. McCarthy and then trade Brock Purdy.
Now, that would be an offseason show for us to dive in on.
Hey, just throwing that out there.
Cody calling for chaos. I'm a fan of it. We got to move on to the other game in that division, Seahawks at Rams. So if the Bucs lose to the Saints, which is obviously unlikely, the Rams will have nothing to play for and will likely bench their starters. We say that just because Sean McVay has benched his starters at every single possibility in his coaching career. There's not been any official word on that. So I would avoid any Rams if you're going to be playing in your any DFS lineups.
So, but let me ask you this, and I think this is a good point too. And because Dan Campbell shed some light on it too, like why didn't they bench their starters last week on Monday Night Football? Not only because they wanted to go in and beat San Francisco, who knocked them out of the playoffs, but because the game happened and they had already prepared all week to play.
Yeah,
like I wonder if that same situation would be like for the Rams. Like I don't know if they'd pull the hot switch unless they're already kind of practicing. Maybe they'll bring him in like the second half, but I imagine the starters will play for a little bit. Even I know McVay is pretty conservative in that, stance, but it is worth noting if the Buccaneers do win, they could fall to the 4 seed and have to play the loser of the Sunday night game as well.
Yeah, so there's definitely something to play for when it comes to that. But if they find out that they don't have to win to get the 3, I would question if they would maybe go half and half or something like that. I don't think it is going to be a complete hot switch. You're right. But because he's been conservative with it, I kind of would shy away from them in DFS lineups just in case.
Yeah, I think that's smart.
Seahawks, obviously, not a whole lot to play for because they are eliminated, but wanted to mention the Rams situation in there. Chargers at Raiders is the next game. This game means absolutely nothing for the Chargers if the Steelers win on Saturday. So you may not see the starters in this one as well. If the Steelers lose, they will be playing to go to Houston instead of Baltimore. So I think there's a pretty big jump there because, I mean, the Harbaugh Bowl obviously is something I was kind of looking forward to seeing, but there's a chance that does not happen. Going to Houston seems like a better matchup for the Chargers as the Ravens handled the Chargers pretty handedly on a primetime game earlier this year.
Yeah, I agree with that one. I would just say the same thing. They probably are preparing to play, so keep that in mind. Mm-hmm. They'll probably play a little bit, not the whole game.
You also have a little bit of a different situation here. It's not between 1 and 4:30. This is a Saturday night game and then a Sunday 4:00 game.
Yeah, but at that point, you've been through all your practices, you've been through all your walkthroughs, and the Chargers, they're on the plane traveling to Las Vegas when this game is being played, anyways. So,
very true there. Also, shout out J.K. Dobbins, who needs 58 rushing yards to get $150,000 extensive, 208 rushing yards to get $300,000. He has a chance to be comeback player of the year.
Yeah, he does. I think it'll be interesting if he gets comeback player of the year for overcoming an injury and coming back
Multiple
strong?
injuries.
Yeah. Or is it Sam Darnold who has the Geno Smith effect where he didn't really come back from anything other than being bad and now is playing really good football?
My argument is, what does come back mean? Has he played good football?
In his past?
Yeah.
I mean, he had a preseason where
You said preseason.
Kyle Shanahan was like, well, we're confident if when Brock Purdy was hurt, everyone's like, well, we're confident in Sam Darnold. Everyone thought he was crazy. Maybe he knew what he was talking about. But like in terms of actually being in the league, I think he started 3-0 with the Panthers once, maybe. Was that him or was that Andy Dalton?
No, it might have been Baker Mayfield.
It could have been Baker Mayfield. Who knows? The Panthers changed their quarterbacks.
Him and Baker Mayfield were on the same Panthers team at one point. So that going around on NFL memes this week.
And the Browns still don't know what they're doing at quarterback.
Amen to that. Chiefs at Broncos. Broncos. So the Broncos are in the most interesting playoff situation here. Obviously, we talked about the Bengals already. Bengals have a chance to sneak into that spot with the Broncos loss and a Dolphins loss. Broncos are the ones that control their own destiny. Winning in. Chiefs not playing Mahomes and a couple other key starters as they're locked into the 1 seed. But I'm interested to see if rust happens on this one because they went from playing on Christmas to getting basically 2.5 weeks off now.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to go over 3 weeks without playing a game. They'll be back practicing, but they'll go 3 weeks without playing a game. So, I mean, I get the Mahomes. He's banged up. Like, that would make sense. Like, don't risk
Is he even banged up? He hasn't looked banged up.
He hasn't looked it, but, they're taping that thing up, injecting that thing up. He's rehabbing like crazy like he always does. But that one I understand. And I guess if you're not going to play Mahomes, why else play anybody else? But this is still Andy Reid coming off of a long break. I know it's Carson Wentz, which is definitely not Patrick Mahomes, but I don't think this is a cakewalk for the Broncos like some people might think.
Now, Chiefs are a well-coached team. You're going to see a couple starters, mostly backups, but they're a pretty deep team as well. So I would not be shocked to see them keeping pace with the Broncos at the least. And the Broncos, as good as a team that they have been, young team, have shown some cracks. They're not a lock.
No, I completely agree with that one. And I think that begs the question, and we can talk about this more later, or we can talk about it now. If you're the Buffalo Bills, which team are you rooting for?
To get into that final spot? I wish I would know if there was a shot for Tua to go in the wild card.
Well, I mean, they have the Dolphins number. Like, I feel like that's the matchup they want, although it is divisional, would be the third time, but they seem to have the Dolphins number. So I feel like and I feel like they don't want to see Joe Burrow.
You don't want to see the Bengals. Because that would also mean that at some point you would have that again rematch of the AFC teams where it would be the Bills would have to get through Burrow, and then they would have another matchup, which would probably be Lamar, and then they would have to play Mahomes. Like, that would be a gauntlet as bad as the Packers would have to play. Like, that if it ended up being that way, where the Packers had to go through the three teams you mentioned and get in, and then the Bills had to go through Burrow, Lamar, and Mahomes to get in, both of those teams deserve to get through the Super Bowl. Just give 2 trophies.
That's a fair point. So, but the Green Bay Packers are going to win in that scenario, just so everyone knows.
But yeah, I think the team you want to see the least is the team with the longest odds, which is probably a good sign for the Bills. The Broncos, as much as they control it, I think, yeah, they would be the team they'd want to see the most, and then the Dolphins and the Broncos, and then the Bengals.
Yeah, I think it would go Dolphins, Broncos, Bengals for that.
So you want to see the Dolphins the most because they've had their number.
Yeah. And I honestly, that's probably, like, just in terms of the matchups, right? I know the Chiefs aren't playing anybody, so that probably still gives the edge to the Broncos have the best shot. But then when you look at the other matchups, like the Bengals have to beat Pittsburgh, where the Dolphins just have to beat the Jets.
Dolphins
And
have the easiest matchup.
if they beat the Jets, like Bengals can win, and it doesn't matter. They get in over the Bengals on a tiebreaker. So,
Yeah.
fascinating stuff.
Interesting that the Bengals are not playing at the same exact time there too. I expected that and the Ravens game to all be in the same window, but they decided to just throw the AFC North into the Saturday games.
Brought to you by HBO Max on ESPN. George is very confused.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
The games are on ESPN, but I said brought to you by HBO Max because of the Hard Knocks AFC North.
Got it. Okay. Yep. There was
joke
a
is terrible.
multi-layered joke there that was really good that I just went right over my head.
Yep. Nothing has changed. George still doesn't get my jokes. I'm the funniest man alive.
Funniest man alive. Happy New Year, Cody. The game we're definitely going to dive into just a little bit more here. Vikings at Lions. Winner gets the 1 seed in the bye. Loser goes to the 5 seed, travels to either Tampa Bay, Atlanta, or LA for the Rams. I want to start off with this one because we kind of already started the conversation. Which one losing would be more devastating?
I think losing more devastating for the Lions because they're already starting to get some pieces back. Like you'd think that extra week would be beneficial for them. They've been the number one team. The only thing that would help them is by them losing and having to go to a quote unquote a wild card spot. It would just feed their underdog gritty mentality. But like their defense is really banged up right now, and having to go play on potentially a short week, if they go on Saturday, probably, how does that work out kind of thing. They're also playing the last game, so it's already going to be the shortest turnaround for anybody.
I would assume
But
they'd give that game at least Sunday.
You would think, but they're not they probably would because the NFL probably wants to, get the Lions moving forward.
Or the Vikings, if we're being like, they're a 14-win team. This is going to be the highest wins total for a wild card team ever.
Yeah, there's also an extra game, so
Debbie Downer over here.
I'm just saying, like, I feel like the Lions losing would hurt the most. How much does that hurt? Like, we're talking marginally,
Mm-hmm.
but that also gets them out of Ford Field for at least 2 games. So, where Minnesota is a very hard place
Probably
to play.
more. Probably the rest of the season.
Yeah, probably. Most likely.
I mean, I would assume the Commanders, I don't think they're going to get too far. The Packers, like I said, the Packers are that wild card team that if they go on a run, they would be the team that would end up having to go to the 5 seed if I had to see it going anywhere. But again, it's unlikely with the gauntlet they would have to face.
Yeah. So getting out of Ford Field, and I think too, like, and this goes for both of them, potentially having to go to Philly if you do and go outside for both quarterbacks.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, Goff's dome and not dome splits are bad. I mean, the Vikings haven't relied too much on the offense. Like, they've been a defensive centric team, very opportunistic with turnovers. I think they have the better build for a playoff team if you're going to make them go on the road in the cold, bang against people. Like, I think that's the Vikings. I like that idea better. The Lions outside in Philly, I don't like it. I'm trying to think, like, there's no other team that you would. That's the only place I can think of that would concern me. Like, if you're going to go to Atlanta, it's a dome. If you're going to go to Tampa Bay, who cares? It's Florida. It's not going to be too cold. Like, it's going to be a tough matchup, but like, there's not really much of an issue there for me with weather. If you ended up having to go back to Minnesota, it's still a dome. Like, it's that Philly and Green Bay are the two, but Green Bay is not going to get a home game against them. So it's Philly.
And if the Commanders, or let's just say they get the 5 seed, they play the 4 seed. If the Commanders or the Packers pull off an upset, they're going to Minnesota in week 2. They're going to have to play back-to-back road games, including the one in Philly.
Yeah.
And that's where I think it'll get interesting, is if that becomes an early afternoon game, or an evening game, or if it doesn't matter because sometimes it's 75 degrees in the middle of January in Pennsylvania for no freaking reason.
Last week, Eagles Cowboys at 60 degrees, and everyone's like, "Are you sure it's December?"
Yeah, that was like the time I went to Green Bay for what was the Commanders' old team name versus the Packers. Second weekend in December, it was like 58, 6 degrees at kickoff. Everyone was sitting in hoodies. The day I flew back was negative 17. I was like, where was this for the game?
Of course. But that's what you don't know what's going to happen with weather. And I mean, that's why we've made all the arguments against the Dolphins for so long, but the Lions have kind of been the underrated one because of how bad the splits have been with Goff outside in the cold or outside in general versus in the dome.
Yeah,
so I agree with you. Just to go on record, I agree with you. I think the Lions would be much more devastating. One, going from ahead to behind at the very end of the season. Two of them being banged up, and three Goff's road splits.
Yeah, and I think too, like, I'm glad you pointed out the Vikings defense is very good. They're one of those gritty teams. Like, no one's talking about them as poorly as they're talking about like the Chiefs and all these close games. The Vikings are doing the exact same thing, and they're both doing it with defenses. And then when they need it, they each have a player. One's a quarterback in Patrick Mahomes, often going to Travis Kelce, and the other one is Justin Jefferson. If they need a play, Justin Jefferson's going to get the ball, and 9 times out of 10 he's coming down with it. And then other time it's actually going to go to Jordan Addison, and he's coming down with it too. So this should be a really good matchup, and it might not be the only time might not be the last time these two teams face off this playoff or this season.
That would be a fun playoff matchup to watch, potentially in the second round, depending on how things fall, or in the conference championship if it ends up falling a different way. But interesting slate of games here. Cody, you and I did a little bit of a DFS lineup, and we can get the fans involved as well. Why don't we go through our lineups really quick? If you want to pull yours up.
Yeah, I'll put my up. I thought you were going to tell me to hit a bumper. I'm like, bro, I don't have a bumper.
I know you do not have a bumper. That's why I stopped. Do you want me to do the sound?
Yeah, please.
Bum, 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 bum. We'll have to make one maybe for the playoffs, as we normally would do playoff challenge, but the NFL.com got rid of that. So
now we do DFS, and this is the
do
best way to
DFS
play fantasy in
lineups.
week 18.
Yes, because you don't have to worry about adding and dropping everybody that you drafted for all these backups. Do you want me to start while you finish pulling your lineup up?
Yeah.
I'll start. We'll go position by position. Quarterback position, I went Bo Nix against Kansas City, hoping to exploit a couple of backups in a game where they have a lot to play for.
100% did the exact same thing. And worth noting, this is not, we don't have the Bengals game, correct? So, like, I couldn't spend all my money on Joe Burrow.
We do not have the Saturday games. This is all Sunday slate. That's the most games we can do in a league in DraftKings.
Not a sponsor. But yes, I have Bo Nix as well.
Bo Nix, okay, so that's not going to make a difference. Running backs, 2 running backs I picked. I spent up to get Bijan, thinking that him against Carolina, I mean, one of the best running backs in the league, bad run defense, playing for something. And then I went Ray Davis against New England, thinking that Buffalo is going to work in some of the backups with their rotation. And Ray Davis has been good when he's been given opportunities.
Yes, so this has been the toughest spot for me as well. I looked at Ray Davis, and I went completely different. I didn't spend up on any running back in this situation. So I went with like 2 backups that I think are going to get some playing time. One is Michael Carter going up against the 49ers. He was kind of the one that at 4,700. And then I also went Carson Steele at 4,700.
I have heard the Chiefs want to give the ball to Carson Steele a lot this week. So I do like that play if you're looking for a cheap option in DFS going ahead.
All right. Wide receivers.
I don't exactly know what I'm doing with my third spot yet. I currently have Hollywood Brown in there. I'm kind of trying to see like how much the Chiefs are going to play him. He's actually a pretty cheap option despite him being involved in his first few weeks back. But if I hear he might not go, I might have to replace with a cheaper option. My other 2 guys, I went 2 games that they don't have anything to play for, but bigger names. Marvin Harrison against San Francisco and DK Metcalf against the Rams.
So I have all 3 of mine. And I went Cortland Sutton Give me the Bo Nix, Cortland Sutton sack, 6,400 for him. Then I went same game, just different player. I went JSN at 6,100. What is DK at? I'm just curious which one is
56. So
I
JSN
thought
has surpassed him like we kind of expect.
right. And then my big money spend on which is why I had to spend so less on running backs is I went Mike Evans 8,000 as he chases that 1,000-yard season for another consecutive year. So
Every year since he came into the league, if he gets it, correct?
yep, and Baker Mayfield knows it. He's talked about it, and he was the one guy I thought he was going to be worth going up against. The Saints are terrible, and the Buccaneers need to win to stay alive, so he should be out there most of the game.
I like that pick a lot. If you have the money to spend up, that is one of the guys that I would target. Tight end position, Cody, I picked somebody who I talk a lot of crap on. Who did I pick?
Cole Kmet.
No, Kyle Pitts.
Oh, you went Kyle Pitts. Nice.
I went Kyle Pitts, 4,000 against Carolina. I'm kind of trying to spend up on a couple of Falcons who I think are going to try to go off on Carolina, despite it, it's going to be a tough matchup because they've been playing spoiler, but hoping Pitts builds off of that, what should have been game winning, but game tying touchdown last week.
Yeah. I mean, way to rebound after the fumbling out of my hands at the 2-yard line into the defender. So, my tight end, I went with Titans tight end, Chigoziem Okonkwo.
You said it pretty well. Okay.
Yeah. And I hope that Mason Rudolph plays a lot more than Will Levis.
I don't blame you there. Will Levis has not, number one, not found the tight end. Number two, not found anybody, it seems like, for most of the season.
And
a couple
Mason
of games
Rudolph,
for Calvin Ridley. That's about it.
And Mason Rudolph is locked in on one Mr. Chigoziem Okonkwo.
Yes, he is. He likes the tight end. My flex, I thought the same way as you with the Bo Nix, Cortland Sutton stack. I just put Cortland Sutton in my flex.
Okay. And my flex, I was thinking the same thing as you with the Falcons. I finally took mine with Drake London at 6,500.
I was thinking about Drake London. I know he's a little bit banged up and hasn't been quite as good, but it seems like they were trying to air the ball out a little bit with Penix. So,
yeah, and he was the, recipient of a lot of catches, so I liked that one.
And then defense, we talked about how bad the Saints have had it. I went Tampa Bay against the Saints.
I went the Green Bay Packers against the Chicago Bears. I didn't have a lot of money left. I was at 3,400, so.
Well, the Bucs were only 36, so I don't think there were many defenses, if any, that were actually above them. All the defenses are pretty cheap this week.
Yeah, so I took the best available at the price I had remaining.
Not too bad. We'll throw our lineups up into a post on TikTok if you guys want to follow along, and I'll also throw the link on there. So check it out. You can join and play against us. See if you can beat our lineups this week playing the Sunday slate, not the Saturday slate, but always fun to get the fans involved going through week 18 into the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think that pretty much wraps up the show. But just with the DFs thing, it is a free league. It is hosted on DraftKings. That's just because that's the one we use, but they're, like I said, not a sponsor. They could be, but they're definitely not. So if you want to start one on FanDuel and invite us, feel free. I think Prize Picks, we can even play DFS Prize Picks in PA.
I think free, but not paid. Yeah.
So if you want to throw it out on there, sure. Any DFS platform you want help on or you want us to join in, feel free to hit us up. But George, anything else for this episode?
Looking forward to see how the weekend goes through and talking playoff football with you next week. So it'll be fun.
Yeah, real quick, notification just came across the desk. Ron Rivera completed his interview with the New York Jets.
All right. We'll see if the coaching change brings on a change with Rodgers in New York. To be continued on that one as we move through the playoffs into the offseason.
And it does. Another message just came across my desk, and it looks like Notre Dame is going to beat Georgia. Here's 10 seconds of college football talk as Notre Dame will now face Penn State.
Notre Dame, Penn State, Ohio State, and Texas. Final four.
Should be Arizona State. They got robbed. But that's a conversation for a different day. That was a great game.
For a different podcast, that's too many seconds.
I know I talk too much college football. I mean, it's time for me to hit this outro music. As always, thanks for checking out the Couch GMs podcast. We are live Mondays and Thursdays. On podcast, make sure to follow along. A lot of things in the works coming up starting this offseason, but we got a lot to get you through the playoffs and all that good stuff. If you're playing week 18, good luck, but make sure you're not doing it next year. Try to enjoy the games, make fun with it, play a drinking game, do whatever you want, have a lot of fun. I'm Cody World Cup. That's George Kurth. We'll talk to you all next week.